With stage two of the pick'ems in the rearview mirror, which maybe is a relief for most of us, it's time for three. Now, if any of you have worked some crazy witchcraft or had divine intervention from the CS gods or Gaben himself, and you still have diamond available, please let me know in the comment section who you went for, because I'm really fascinated at how few people are still on for diamond. Stage two was an absolute disaster. And as a quick disclaimer, I'm going to be doing my HLTV Fantasy League picks at the end of this video, so it's going to be a longer one. And I also did a recap of Stage 2 in a video previously because I knew that this would be a long video and I didn't want it to go on for an hour or 2 hours or whatever else. So if you want to see the full recap of Stage 2, please go and check that out first before this video. If you're only here for the pick'ems, no worries, let's get straight into this one. So we do have our opening matches, which of course is always really important. Same format as before, best of ones for the opening games, best of threes for the elimination or the progression games, and then after this is the playoffs. So this is the business end, this is where the big boys are to play, and although we have lost a few teams along the way that probably should have been here, it's still stacked in terms of talent and it's stacked in terms of teams. So we have Vitality and Legacy, Mouse and VP, Spirit Take on Pain, G2 and 3D Max, the Mongolz and Furia, Aurora FaZe, Na'Vi and Amiga, and then finally Liquid and Lin Vision. Now, as you'll see, the opening fixtures are incredibly close. Some of them are 50-50 coin flips as per usual, but then you have other games that maybe don't look quite as 50-50 on paper at least. And that's because of the wacky nature of how Stage 2 came about. Legacy 3-0ing puts them against Vitality. Congratulations, boys. There's your reward again. VP against Mouse also, on paper, you'd think probably quite one-sided, but the way that VP played in Stage 2, I'm not so sure anymore. And then towards the bottom, you have Liquid and Lin Vision and Na'Vi against Amiga. Now, my concern with some of these games are, and I did discuss this before, why best of ones are throwing up so much in terms of shocks and surprises in CS2. They did in CSGO, to be honest. I think it's recency bias that people are saying, oh, it's so much more surprises in CS2. It did in CSGO. We had some crazy stages and some crazy playoffs, like Krakow, anybody, just really weirdness. But I think the fact it's MR12 really does breathe like a new level of that too. So I'm less inclined to necessarily believe that the best teams will guarantee 3-0. I mean, we saw this in Stage 2. The Falcons did just look terrible, though. They didn't get wrecked by the format. They got wrecked by themselves. Like, if we're being completely honest, that's what happened. VP getting the 3-0, though, they annihilated Bait, and they annihilated OG, who both looked super good in Stage 1. I think it was 13-3, 13-4. Let me double check on this one real quick. Oh, it's even worse, 13-2, 13-3. So they only lost five rounds in the first two maps, and then went flawless against Pain as well, although it was a very close game. So I'm looking at some of these opening stage games, and I'm thinking there's upsets. There's definitely going to be upsets happening, right? Like, I can't look at that Stage 2 and assume that this is where sanity comes back to the server, because we have teams in incredible form that people never expected to get even close, and teams that should have made it to this stage that either was really labored, like FaZe, for example, or just completely left the realms, like Falcons, Heroic, Bait are three teams that come off the top of my head. So in these opening stage games, there's a couple of things that I want to say. First off, I'm going to go with Vitality to 3-0, but there's a couple of caveats to this one and a couple of things that make me a little bit nervous about putting them 3-0. First off, Legacy have looked great. We have to give them the credit they deserve. You know, a team that shouldn't have been here if you go off the basis of qualifications or bestie situation aside. But the fact that they were able to barrage their way through the Stage 2, getting notable wins against teams like FaZe, just bullying teams on the server, like straight up, and doing some really amazing calls, but also having this insane amounts of confidence, no fear, no worry mentality. Like, this is a free hit, let's make the most of it, let's have a good time, let's just really enjoy ourselves. That worked fantastically. This is the best time to play Vitality, bar none. First game, best of one, a team in crazy momentum that has outrageous confidence and self-belief. There is a potential upset here, and this would be a huge upset, all things considered. Additionally, I'm very curious where the map pool veto is going to come down to, because this This is the exact same game that I've discussed a couple of times in my previous videos when I talked about Legacy, when I had them to make it through in the first stage, when very few people thought that that was possible. And I said it was the game they played against Vitality, I believe it was Dallas, in a best of 3, where on Dust 2, they took them to their limits. Now, the first map was Mirage, and they got smashed 13-5. The second map was Dust 2, and it was... Vitality nearly lost it. It was a real struggle. I'm curious if Vitality will let Dust 2 be played, because this is also the same map that Legacy's had a lot of success on when it comes to the major itself so far. They got a win against FaZe on Dust 2 when they 2-0'd them to make it through 3-0 in the first place. They bullied long, they bullied through middle, they just pushed. Every time they had a good spawn, they pushed off the back of it. There was no worry, there was no doubts. Now, if you compare that to a team like Pain, who looked a lot more slow, methodical, but also a little bit more timid and scared, and I think that's why VP got the win against them in the end when things got rough on Dust 2, and then obviously you had that moment from Flit. But that's my concern here for Vitality, is you're going up against a team that has reached a fever pitch of momentum. You're coming into this event cold. There is a chance. Also, on top of that, if I have a quick look at Vitality, you'll notice something. They are on a 30-match win streak. That is insane. 100% win rate over the last 3 months. You'd have to go back to January of this year, where they lost, I believe it was to Eternal Fire. Where is this? Yeah, here, Eternal Fire 2-0, who are now, of course, Aurora. But notice something. None of these wins are best of ones. It's all BO3s. It's all BO5s. So that's a concern as well. That's a potential chink in the armor. You're coming in cold. All of these wins, you have dropped a fair few maps along the way, though. You haven't been flawless. Yes, you've been a great team. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to, like, put off that Vitality are the best team in the world. They are, absolutely. Their stock has only risen throughout the duration of this major. Interestingly, just passively, just by existing, because we've seen all these other teams, like, fall away and fade and just have horrible results. None of these have been best of ones. Those are the components that make me a little bit nervous about putting Vitality as a 3-0, but I'm just going to go off the basis that they are the best team in the world, bar none, by a distance. And Legacy, yes, you've had a great major so far, but this is where I think you run into a brick wall. And you better believe that if people were overlooking Legacy and they weren't giving them the respect they deserved, you know, like they shouldn't be here, they're not going to do anything at this major. We're not going to even bother to really look too much into them. We'll focus on other teams instead. They make it through stage 1. Maybe the same happened in stage 2. There is no way that Vitality have not now noticed Legacy and said, fair enough. You got our respect, you've got our attention. We're going to do everything we can to make sure we're as prepared as possible for this first game. That aggression that you've showed, we can counter it. We can shut that one down, no problems. Maybe just ban Dust 2 altogether if you feel like it. So I think Vitality will 3-0. I've got to go off the basis that they're the best team in the world. Alongside that, I'm going for the Mongolz. The Mongolz start off their tournament up against Furia, who were solid, decent, definitely an improved team over what we've seen for quite some time now. And I would argue that this is one of the best Furies we've seen in a very long time. I think Fallen going back to just IGLing with the rifle, well, I say go back, he's never really been that player, but going back to that position and giving the upper cross to Molodoi was absolutely the correct choice for Furia. It was the correct choice for Fallen individually as well for his career, and he has definitely been a better player, more useful, and Furia have been better overall. Ikindar offers something into this team with his aggression, with his entry fragging, with his no fear mentality that he can often go for. He can be that X Factor player. Like, look, if you need to throw a lamb to the slaughter, he can be your guy, you know, and he has no problem doing that. He'll take one for the team, no problems. And then we've seen like Serato in particular, less so Yuri, although I think he still has that ability within him. But Serato has just kind of felt like he's built in confidence a little bit. We're starting to see him land a little bit more in terms of impact. He still has his shaky moments though. A couple of times we saw this on Nuke in particular. He was whiffing sprays. He was having a horrible time and he got punished. So Furia for me are a little bit of a concern at this level. You've had a good couple of stages. You've managed to do a decent amount of work in stage 2 in particular, obviously. But this is where you run into the Mongolz. And what are the Mongolz phenomenal at? Group stages. What are the Mongolz insanely potent and powerful in? Best of 1 group stages. This is where they are at their best. This is where they slaughter. There's no crowd, there's no pressure, there's no worries. They can just come into this and do what the Mongols do best, and that is just play super lights out individual brilliance, crazy aim from players like Mizinho in particular. We also seen like 910, Senzu having good performances as of late. I think this is where the Mongols are going to shine very bright. They also had a nice boon in confidence by beating Aurora in that playoff game recently, which I think has just made them feel a little bit more sure in themselves, have a bit more confidence. A team that has often talked about burnout, which understandable. They're a team, you know, from the Mongolia region. They're going to be traveling a crazy amount, even if they are boot camping in Europe a lot of the time. It's a lot of time away from home. It's a lot of time away from family, and that can definitely affect players. Well, they haven't really done much recently. They've had a chance to sit back now for the first two group stages, which is effectively 2+ weeks of just chilling, boot camping, relaxing, and doing demos and watching the games, where they don't necessarily have to feel that burnout. This could be a very fresh-faced Mongols team coming through here, and I think if that's the way that they are going to be looking at this tournament, they're going to be a nightmare to play against in this group stage. Maybe things taper off and they fall away in the arena, which is typically what happens with the Mongols. But to my knowledge, this is going to be in the hotel again. This is going to be in front of no crowd, no real audience, apart from obviously the viewers at home. But you're not going to have that energy, that surge of energy from the crowd. And so I think the Mongols, this is where they do their best business, and I think they will 3-0. They're going to be a very difficult team to beat. If by some way the system puts the Mongols versus Vitality, I would even say the Mongols can beat Vitality. That might be the perch that gets knocked off in these best of ones. Not so much against Legacy, but it's that 1-0 game where I think Vitality could be in for a run for their money. So watch this space, I guess. For the 0-3 teams, I think, like, realistically, the most obvious picks for most people that maybe haven't really been watching the major, they're like, oh, I'll just put Namiga and Linvision in, right? Because they're the worst two teams here. But it's like, if you've been watching Linvision, these guys are quite scary. These guys are actually quite good. They're also against Liquid in their first game, and no disrespect to Liquid, but we've not really seen them shift through the gears just yet in terms of their performances. Like, the last 3 months, sure, this is nearly a month ago. Sure, they're losing to three of the best teams in the world. 2-0, or even picking up a map against the Mongols. They're playing against a very high level of opposition, and we haven't really seen them cook too much just yet. But before that, there's a lot of red. Yes, without Shui being new to the roster as well. My concern, I've got to say, with this Liquid squad is Naf right now. His individual performances, you can see, have been rough. And I don't like to do this because Naf, by the way, super cool guy, super nice guy. But I've just got to be real, right? Like, personal biases aside of how cool he is as a person, how good of a person he is, he's been having a rough one with Liquid. I mean, you can't deny it, right? Like, he's at the bottom of the scoreboard most of the time. That is an issue. This team is one that you look at it, Nerds, Twists, Ultimate, NAF in good form. This is a powerhouse squad. This is a team that can go toe-to-toe with anybody. Shui as an IGL as well, showing what he did at Mouse. This could be a really exciting team. I've got to assume that they've been working hard since we last saw them. I've got to assume that the Liquid that we see at Stage 3 is significantly better than the last time we saw them out. I've got to assume that, but I'm going off assumptions. But I will say I think they should still beat Linvision, even though Linvision have had some good results. They have also struggled at times. The teams they've beat, Falcons, who were garbage. Like, there's no other way of talking about it. Falcons were garbage. Right? I think everyone agrees. Beat Tyloo, they didn't make it. They got 2-0'd by Pain. They got beat by Furia 13-4, just smashed. Then in the previous stage, they beat NRG, nothing spectacular. They beat Chinggis Warriors, but lost the map against them. Lost an Amiga, lost a wildcard who didn't even make it. So, although Linvision have definitely impressed and surprised, more so than I thought was possible, when you look at some of the results they've been having, that bait result, very legit, taking nothing away from it at all. But when you look at some of the results they've had, it doesn't breathe the same level of confidence, especially coming through to this stage. So I'm going to put Linvision again as a 0-3 pick. Could end up regretting this, especially if they start well against Liquid. I've got to assume that the Liquid that shows up here is significantly better than the last time we saw them. If they are, they can beat Linvision, and I'm sure they've been doing a lot of homework on Linvision as well. I am also going to put Namiga in there. I said they're the two obvious picks, and I'm going to just follow through with that. There is a couple of considerations I'll make. One of these will definitely be an unpopular one, and I nearly did go for it. G2, I think, are in the running for a 0-3 pick. It sucks, right? But you have to take into account this is a dead team walking. Saw and Sun Pius are on their way to G2. Taz is going to be out, assuming that he'll be out at least. And on top of that, Hades is out. From what we've seen of G2 since the addition of Hades and obviously the change around that they've had back and forth, not been a great team. They have been lacking in firepower. And here's the other problem, I think, for G2. Their opening matches against 3D Max, these guys have looked really sharp at stage 2 of the major. And stylistically, I think this is a horrible game for G2. Like, one thing you don't really immediately coin in your mind when you think of G2 is tactical prowess, right? This isn't really an element where Snax is at his A game. He's not a tactical mastermind. He's not getting all these crazy strategies in place. 3D Max are that team. They are him. And I think this tactically, strategically is going to be very much in favor of 3D Max. Additionally, one thing you can maybe say against 3D Max is like, well, they lack crazy star players, but they've been popping off in stage 2. They body bagged FaZe, looked really good in the process. And so I think everything in this opening fixture goes in 3D Max's favor. Genuinely, I think they are the favorites in this game. Maybe not by much, but I think they are. So I think they're a contender for a possible 0-3 pick, even though I think a lot of people would disagree with that assessment, because obviously they've got a lot of fans, but I just don't see them as being one of the better teams here. I'd be very surprised if they make it through to the playoffs. Right, so we have our 3-0s and our 0-3s in place. Next up, we're just going to make this pretty straightforward. I'm expecting Mouse. I'm expecting Spirit. I am also expecting Aurora to make it through. Now, let's just discuss a few things here. I think these are self-explanatory. They're some of the best teams in the world. My concern with Mouse is they're starting against VP in the opening fixture. VP looked really solid in stage 2, and whether they can continue that form going forward or not is yet to be seen. They did beat 2 teams that didn't even make it to this stage, right? They beat OG and they beat Bait. Neither of them made it through to this point. They then beat Pain 2-0, but without a couple of moments of brilliance in terms of tactical calling or execution with Flip, whatever you want to call it, a couple of crazy moments from Icy on Mirage, that could have easily been a 2-0 to Pain, and at that point, who knows what happens with VP. They were also based a lot of their results, it felt like to me, on just individual moments of brilliance from players on the team, Electronic in particular really stepping it up. Strategically, it didn't blow me away. And the problem with that is that if VP go off the boil and Electronic doesn't have that same level of impact and they go back to more of the stage they were at before the major, where myself and very few other people had faith in them, then they could just be cannon fodder and they could get straight up wrecked. I still think whatever happens, though, that Mouse just have too much on the server. Brolan is proving himself time after time to be an amazing IGL, really solid IGL. Many people, when he first took over the reins, had no faith. They thought Mouse were going to drop off the edge of the map. What are you doing letting Shui go? What are you doing putting Brolan, a guy that was completely unproven as an IGL, in that role? And yet everything's gone great. Spinks being added in the mix as well has been incredible for this team. Torji continues to be a consistent beast with the AWP. The only player I look at, actually, surprisingly for Mouse, that could drop off and be a problem is Jimmy. And he was one of the players under Shui's leadership that was at the top. He does have times where he is actually dropping towards the bottom of the scoreboard and not having as much impact as he did before. That's maybe a problem, but I still think Mouse are going to be more than capable of locking this one in and making themselves go through to the next stage in the playoffs. Spirit, the only thing I can say that concerns me about Spirit, because they are playing against Pain in the first game, I think it should be a fairly straightforward win for Spirit. And you guys know I love Pain. I love these guys. I think they're a great team. Not sure I'm going to have them to advance, though. I've got to be honest, I saw a few moments of indecision, especially against VP, that put me off a little bit. But I don't know if it was the nerves. You'd have to assume, though, as the major goes on, those nerves are only going to increase. But I did see a lot of good things for Pain. However, Spirit are just too strong for a team like Pain right now, I feel like. The potential weaknesses and firepower that Pain have from time to time, if NQZ's not quite feeling it, sure, we'll have him for dinner. If, like, Snow's having a rough game, or if Davideus is a little bit off, or if DGT's not quite landing the mark, Donk is going to feast. And so I think Spirit are just the absolute favourites in that game, even though I do love Pain. Spirit win the game, in my opinion. My concern with Spirit, though, and the potential reason why maybe some people would have them as a 3-0, as more of a gamble pick, maybe over someone like the Mongols, is that at times it feels like the teamwork's not quite there. And I've heard rumors, and I don't know how legit this is or how accurate this is, so maybe just take it with a pinch of salt, but like lack of boot camps because they don't like doing it, or there's some problems within the team in terms of personalities not getting along, or whatever it may be. That's maybe something that could cause to a self-destructive element of Spirit where they don't make it through. But with all those things being said, they're still too good not to make it to the playoffs. They have to make it. Aurora, similar to the Mongols, they're group stage merchants. This is where they do their best work. The playoffs is a different story. I have almost no faith in Aurora when it comes to playoffs. I think they choke. I think they just have this mental block, whatever it may be. Losing to the Mongols in that playoff game they had recently was like the final nail in the coffin for that one. But in terms of group stages, best of ones, pressure is off to a certain degree. This is where Aurora will cook, and I expect them to make it through. They may even 3-0. It's a possibility. They're against FaZe in their first game, who I think looked all over the place in the last stage. And so I think Aurora get that W, and I think they're going to be good to go. This is where it gets more tricky, right? Because on the one hand, there's a couple of teams that you would think would have to be in the mix, like Na'Vi. 3D Max looked really good. FaZe is going to be up for debate as well, I think. But FaZe were very concerning to me. They started great against Heroic, right? There was all of this bad blood, or well, I want to say it was in good faith, you know, a bit of banter, a bit of back and forth. Simple saying how he's going to wreck these bots. And they went and they did it. They lit a fire under Simple's ass, and then he prevailed, and so did the rest of FaZe. They absolutely annihilated Heroic. And then things got a little bit sketchy. They end up losing to 3D Max in that 2-1 matchup, go down against MIBR. First map is very good, second map is pretty close. A little bit nervous about this FaZe team, I've got to be honest. They play like they're a team that is new together as a roster. Simple didn't have a great performance against 3D Max in particular, and although he had a couple of moments in the stage 2 where you saw Simple kind of wind back the years, picked up a beautiful 3K on Dust 2 on the little ramp area, playing on CT side, some exquisite shots. The last flick through the box was insane. You saw moments, you saw flurries, you saw glimpses, but it might be too early in Simple's journey with FaZe to get them to the playoffs. I still think they've got some problems they have to work on. I still see Elige go missing too often. I still see Frozen often having to be the consistent player that they rely on, and that's unreasonable to him. I do have my concerns. So I'll have to go back to FaZe again and see if I do put them through. If I do, it will be my gamble 6th pick. I'm certainly not putting them at the front of the queue. I'm going to have 3D Max as my next pick. Strategically, great team. Tactically on point, really strong map pool as well. They're also up against a team that I think they should get the upper hand on against G2 in the opening matchup. And although they don't have crazy star players, it's a real kind of joint effort. It's a lot of cogs in the machine with 3D Max. I view them as like this battle tank. Slow, meandering, but they get the job done. And everyone's doing their pieces within the tank. That's how I view them as a team, and I think that's going to be enough. In a situation with best of ones where the pressure is up, where there's craziness happening and twists and turns and surprises and shocks and everything else going on, I think 3D Max are the kind of like slow but steady approach that you actually need a lot of the time. They're going to get the job done. They're going to be able to get W's. They're going to be able to just churn out the results. And I see them doing it again here. I think they will make it through to the next stage. Next, I'm going to go with... This is very tough. I'm thinking Furia, I'm thinking Pain, I'm thinking Na'Vi, and I'm thinking FaZe are the 4 teams. You could maybe make an argument for Liquid as well. That is a possibility. You could go for Liquid. I don't have faith in G2. Legacy, unfortunately, I think are going to come undone here. They're going to get red. Oh, man. This is really, really tough. Actually, super tough. But do you know what? I don't have faith in Na'Vi. I don't think I'm putting Na'Vi for the playoffs. They've got some really good players, obviously, like Bit, for example, but they lack crazy star players. And I think the issue for me with Na'Vi, they start against Namiga, so you probably think, well, why wouldn't you put them through? That should be a win for them. It's another reason why I'm not sure I'm putting Amiga as 0-3. I could honestly see Na'Vi losing that game. I can see them losing it, for sure. It would not surprise me in the slightest. And they've been so up and down. This year has not been a good one for Na'Vi, that when they start getting towards the, I don't think they'll go out like 0-3 or 1-3. I think it'll be the last day 2-2 matchup, and they'll be against somebody like a Liquid or a VP or a Furia, and I think they'll lose it. That's where I'm looking at with Na'Vi. They're going to be one of those periphery picks at the end on the last day. I'd be very surprised if they go through it like 3-0, 3-1. Very surprised. I'm going to say, I've got to stick with one here, and I know I'm going to change my mind multiple times. I'm going to say that FaZe do make it by the skin of their teeth. They're going to power up as time goes on. They're going to get better as the event continues. And they're going to make it. It's not going to be pretty. It's not going to be very good, but they're going to do it. And then my last team to make it is going to be, I'm going to say it's going to be VP. Oh, how do I feel about VP there? Oh, it makes me feel gross because I've disliked this team for so long. I can't overlook the 3-0 in the last stage. Yeah, sure, they beat 2 teams that didn't make it, but they smashed them. And although there's a very good chance that Electronic doesn't put up those kind of performances and the team does struggle and it doesn't have the same level of get up and go as we saw in stage 2, I also can't overlook the fact that if they have found that perfect moment to all chime together to perform as a unit, that this team is very capable of making it through. Because for us, there's some unknown quantities with Liquid. It's like, do we think that they're going to be better than the last time we saw them? Yes. But how good? Do we think that Pain or Furia are going to be good enough to make it through here? They could be. They could be, right? But I think they both have unfortunate opening fixtures. Like Pain against Spirit, that's an unlucky one. You're in the 0-1 bracket already, potentially playing against a juggernaut team in the second game. Furia, you're going up against, was it the Mongolz or Aurora? Let's double check. It's one of the two. Yeah, you're going up against the Mongolz in the first game. Like, unlucky. You just got wrecked. You got wrecked off the draw. Mongolz are going to be too good, I think. And at that point, you're in that 0-1 floating kind of bracket where it's going to be very tough to bounce back from that. Extremely tough to bounce back from that. So my concerns here for my pick'ems are VP and FaZe, right? Because both of them, VP looked great in stage 2, but before that they've looked woeful. FaZe have an amazing amount of ability level, but I don't think we've even seen close to their peak. But I've got to believe in Simple to step it up. I've got to believe in FaZe to be able to come out here, even though I think they're going to be starting at a 0-1 on paper. I hate leaving out Na'Vi, Liquid, and Pain in particular, but this is what my gut's telling me. This is what my gut is telling me. These are the teams that I'm going to save as my pick'ems. Right, so as I said, I would go through very briefly my HLTV fantasy picks, and I've mainly focused on Vitality, as you can see, because I do think they're going to 3-0. They're the best team in the world. Rops was 225, which is expensive. Apex only 202. I thought he might be a bit more expensive than that one. I've gone for Electronic, assuming and gambling on him playing the same level as we saw in stage 2. Could very well backfire spectacularly. I wanted to get one player in from the Mongolz and Aurora because they are group merchants. This is where they do their best work. Mazinho, rock solid player, tons of ability, also easy to just slap headshot machine on him. His headshot percentage is 66%, guys. That's absurd. That's like one of the highest that you can possibly find of a player that's actually consistently fragging and being in the mix. And then our budget player is Madja. And there's something about Madja and Mages, which that's an unintended pun. He's just got a weird name. You go back to, like, was it Copenhagen or was it Shanghai, where he just popped off, he went nuclear, and he basically solo carried, I should say, Aurora or Eternal Fire back then into, like, the playoffs, and he was doing so much work. Well, he nearly got them into the playoffs. For 181k on a team that I think will get some wins here, it's a bit of a gamble, especially if Aurora have a horrible start. But realistically, most of my money, my finances is going into this Vitality, and I think that they're going to get it done again. I think Vitality are going to win this major. I'm going to say it right now. I would be very surprised if they don't. Maybe my opinion will change after stage 3 if they pull a phase or like a, or maybe even a Falcons, but then they're not in the contention anymore anyway. If they drop a bunch of maps and they're having a rough time and it's looking really grim for them, then maybe we change that decision when we get to it. But right now, at the time of making this video, 30 match unbeaten streak, best team in the world. I'm going with Vitality, not to just 3-0, but I'm going to go for them to do it in style, and I'm picking up 2 players. So thank you very much for watching all of this content, guys. Really appreciate you for hanging around and liking it and sharing it and subscribing. Really appreciate that a great deal. It helps the channel tremendously, and I'll try and do some more of this content as well. Obviously, we'll have the pick'ems, whatever happens, even if I just have an absolute stinker and we go out like, you know, with just 1 or 2 correct picks, we'll definitely go back to that. And I just forgot as well, I didn't even show you how many I got right here. It was only 3. I got 3 out of 10. Might be the worst I've ever done in probably the hardest stage of all time. See you in the next video. Peace.